Hi everybody, today we are looking at solving equations with fractions. So this is just going into a little bit more of what we did last lesson. So if you look at the last PowerPoint I posted, that's looking at one-step and two-step equations. This is just adding an extra step or equations that involve fractions. Now we know fractions, when we draw them, they have a numerator and they have a denominator. But fractions like this can also be written as a divide symbol, okay? So A over B is the same as me saying A divided by B, okay? So if we substituted that with numbers, A over 3 is the same as me saying A divided by 3. The same way that we have the rule for multiplication, which we've already been through a few times. AB, if there's two letters written together, or a number and a letter, we put an invisible times sign between them, okay? So AB means A times B, 3A means 3 times A. The one thing that we need to remember when we are solving equations is the opposite. So I'm just going to write a little note again in our corner to say the opposite of times is divide, the opposite of divide is plus, the opposite of plus is minus, the opposite of minus is plus. And remembering what we do on one side of the equal sign, we have to do to the other side of the equal sign. So I'm just going to use an example that we went over last lesson. If you're unsure, I would suggest that you look at the video before this one, where we just have a one-step equation. So remember, when we're solving equations, we want to try to figure out what x is equal to. It's equal to a number. So in this case, we want to isolate the x and have the x on one side and numbers on the other side. So over here, 4 is being multiplied by x. Now to get rid of the 4, we have to do the opposite. So the opposite of multiply is divide. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide this side by 4, which means we have to divide this side by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. That has now cancelled. So I'm left with x equals 8 divided by 4, which is 2. Okay, so that was just to show you the steps that we're using. Remember, I like to use two different colors. I like to use one color to show what my step is and the second color to show my answer. All right, we're going to add our fraction in now, and I'm going to show you how it works. So when we're solving, we basically want to work with everything that's away from the x first. So if we look here, the 4 is with the x, whereas the 3 is away from it, okay? It's not with the x. So what we're going to do is we're going to be able to get rid of this 3 first. Now this is a divided by 3, and remember, we know that because this symbol or this fraction means divide. So if we're dividing by 3 here, the opposite of divide is times. That looks like a plus sign. This should be a multiplication sign. The opposite of divide is times. So we're going to, over here, times by 3, and because we times by 3 on this side, we have to times by 3 on this side. So if we multiply by the 3, that means the 3's have cancelled, so we're left with 4x. Okay, and then here we have to do 8 times 3. 8 times 3 is 24. Okay, and then here we're left with a question looks oddly similar to that. So to get rid of the 4 here, 4 times x, the opposite of times is divide. So we're going to divide by 4 on this side, which means we have to divide by 4 on this side. All right, so 4 divided by 4 is 1, so the x is now on its own. Okay, 24 divided by 4 is 6. 6, 12, 18, 24. So my answer for x is 6, and I can substitute that back in to check if my working out is correct. So I can say 4 times x, or 4 times 6 is 24. 24 divided by 3 is indeed 8, which means this answer is correct. All right, so at the moment we've done a one step. It involves one pink line. We've done a two step, involves two pink lines. Now what we're going to look through is combining our fraction without adding and subtracting to make it what we're now going to do a three-step equation. So first things first is we want to get rid of whatever's not with the x first. So if we look over here, the x is being multiplied by the 4, and then that's being divided by 3, and then we're adding the 2. So 2 is the last thing to be done. So if we're working backwards, that's the first thing that's going to be undone. So that's most furthest away from the x. So plus 2, the opposite of plussing is subtracting. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. Okay, so if I do that, that has now cancelled. So I'm left with 4x over 3. So I'm going to write 4x over 3 equals 6 take away 2. 6 take away 2 is 4. Okay, and now this question looks oddly the same as this one. All right, so here we are dividing by 3, because remember fraction means divide. So the opposite of divide is times. So we're going to times by 3, and it's going to be the same as what we've done here. So we're going to be left with 4x equals 4 times 3 is 12. And then here we've got a multiplication between the 4 and the x. So the opposite of timesing is dividing. So we're going to divide by 4, divide by 4. Okay, so if we cancel that, we're going to be left with an x. 12 divided by 4 is 3, which means our answer for x is 3. And we can check our working out. We can say 4 times 3, because x is 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Then 4 plus 2 is definitely 6. So I can give myself a tick there. All right. So without using the numbers 4, x's and 3's that we've sort of built up in this question, we're going to have a go at 3 others that are very similar in terms of process to here, just to practice. So over here, all right, I've got a 4y plus 15, all divided by 9. So the last thing that I did there was divide it by 9, which means when I'm working backwards, that's the first thing I'm going to do. So dividing by 9, the opposite of division is multiplication. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides by 9. Okay, that would cancel with each other. So I would be left with 4y plus 15 equals 3 times 9, which is 27. All right, and now I've got a 4y plus a 15. Now, what's not with my letter? Hopefully you guys said the 15, so that's what we're going to get rid of next. So the opposite of adding 15 is subtracting 15. So we're going to subtract 15 from both sides, which means I'm going to be left with a 4y. 27 take away 15 is 12. Okay, and I'm left with 4y equals 12. The opposite of timesing by 4 is dividing by 4. So we're going to divide by 4 and divide by 4. So I'm going to be left with a y. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So my answer is y equals 3. Again, I can substitute that 3 back into my question. So 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 15 is 27. Then 27 divided by 9 is indeed 3. So that means my answer is correct. All right, so this is called a 3-step equation because I've had to do 3 things, all right, to get to my final answer. All right, this one over here, I've got a 4 plus 5x over 2. Now, the reason I say we see what is without the x first is because that's what we want to work with, okay? So here I've got a 5x. That 5x is being divided by 2. And then I'm adding a 4 on top of it. So that 4 is what I've got to get rid of first. So the opposite of adding 4 is subtracting 4. So we're going to subtract 4 and subtract 4. So I'm going to be left with, this is going to cancel, 5x over 2. 29 take away 4 is 25. Okay. And then I am left with 5x over 2 equals 25. So now we're going to look at, again, what's away from the x? That's the 2. So the opposite of dividing 2 is timesing 2. So we're going to times 2 on this side, times 2 on this side. That has now allowed me to get rid of my 2. So I'm left with a 5x. All right. 25 times 2 we know is 50. So I'm going to write 50 down. And now my final step to get x by itself is, this is 5 times x. So the opposite of times is divide. So I'm going to divide by 5. What I do on one side, I do to my other side. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, so I'm left with x on its own. 50 divided by 5 is 10. All right, and I can check my answer if I want to. 5 times x, if x is 10, 5 times 10 is 50. 50 divided by 2 is 25. 25 plus 4 is indeed 29, so I can give myself a tick. All right, lucky last over here. Again, I look at what's isolated on its own that's not including the x, and that's the 7. So that's the first thing we got to get rid of. Remember, if there's no number in front of it, that means it's a positive number. So the opposite of positive is negative. So I'm going to subtract 7 from this side. So I have to subtract 7 from this side as well. All right. So looking over here, 7 take 7 is now 0. So I am left with negative 2x over 3. I cannot forget that negative because it belongs in front of this part of my equation. Equals 5 take away 7. That's going to be a negative number. So 5 take away 7 is going to be negative 2. All right. And now what I'm doing is I'm seeing what's not with my x. Okay, so the 2 is with my x, the 3 is the next step. So divided by 3, which means the opposite of divide is times. So I'm going to times by 3 on this side. So I have to times by 3 on this side. And then going to be left with a negative 2x over here. So we're going to go negative 2x equals negative 2 times 3. Remember, a negative number times by a positive number is negative. So it's going to be negative 2 times 3, which is 6. All right, and then again, I'm just left with negative 2x. Between the 2 and the x, there is a multiplication sign. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2. All right, so now all I'm going to be left with is the x, because those negative 2's are going to cancel out and make 1. X equals negative 6 divided by negative 2. Now a negative number divided by negative is positive. 6 divided by 2 is 3, which means my answer is 3. So just to recap, the things that we need to focus on is knowing that we do the opposite symbol, okay, to get rid of it or to cancel the number. But what you do on one side, you have to do the same on the other. And that's, again, why I like using different colored pens to make sure that I'm writing the same thing twice, one on each side of the equal sign. Hopefully that made sense. If it did, please give this video a thumbs up, comment down below if there's anything you would like me to clarify. Otherwise, enjoy. Thank you. Bye.